Welcome to the Geekcentric podcast, and welcome to our review for the A24 film, The Smashing Machine. Winning is the best feeling there is. Hello, I'm J-Law, but you can call me Justin. And if you're joining us for the first time, well, we are Geekcentric, a podcast covering the world of movies, TV shows, toys, collectibles, gaming, and all things geek-centric. And today, we're diving into the latest A24 film, The Smashing Machine. This review is part of our TIFF coverage, so a huge thank you to the Toronto International Film Festival for accrediting us as press and giving us the chance to see this film early for review. Joining me for today's episode is my fellow geek, a smashing machine in his own right. Though what he's usually smashing is tacos. The one and only Nate Shelton.
I mean, can you smell it? I can smell it.
I can smell what you're cooking, bro.
Is he okay? If we're gonna talk about smashing tacos, though, coming from the guy that always orders the second set of tacos. Oh, I'm getting them for my wife. She's gonna eat them. No, bro, you're housing those tacos. Shout out to Ghost Taco, but yeah, man, I'm doing good. You know, sometimes you have to smash some tacos before talking about a movie like this. You know.
Yeah, absolutely. Taco smashing is a must. But yeah, no, I'm excited to get into talking about this. This, as I mentioned, this was part of our TIFF experience.
Mm-hmm.
You and I ventured down bright and early. I think
So
that was
early.
probably the most tired I've been in a really long time.
Well, what did we get up to go for this? This was because it was an
We
early.
both had to
P&I.
wake up at like 4 a.m. because so just for a little context, we live outside of Toronto, about an hour outside of Toronto, and just based on that, like, yes, we could have driven, but we knew we were going to be moving around a lot, and we also knew that someone else was going to be driving. Darcy was going to be driving down, so we ended up taking transit, which, you know, you always have to plan a little bit more time for, just to ensure. But we did make it down. You know, the P&I, the press and industry screening, was scheduled for 8:30, and we got there for 7.
Yeah,
because we figured it was going to be pretty packed.
this is a big one.
It was a big one. It was one of the. It was one of the. It was one of the many.
Right?
I guess maybe one of the top 3. It was one of the ones that I really wanted to see.
Like
I don't even know
it at least
for sure. I was very excited to see this film, and that it was screening here in Toronto for the Toronto International Film Festival. So it was definitely on the top of my list for movies that I wanted to see. So yeah, we trekked down. You know, we both got up at 4 a.m. Respectively in our own houses, and got ready. We were at the train by like for 5:30, down by like 6:30, and at the front of the theater by 7. Still had time to have breakfast and everything. Thankfully, it didn't rain that day, unlike Sentimental Value. Yeah, it was quite the experience, and I was surprised too, because like that day was a whole fog. Like, it was just a fog after, but the movie stuck with me. For better and for worse. So we'll talk about that. I'm going to read our listeners here a more specialized synopsis from the TIFF website. It gets into a little bit more detail. In one of the year's most surprising pairings, Dwayne Johnson and indie icon Benny Safdie, who directed Uncut Gems, which screened at TIFF in 2019, team up in The Smashing Machine, the powerful story of pioneering mixed martial arts UFC fighter Mark Kerr. Kerr helped grow the sport's popularity in its early days, but the fight's brutal demands took a toll, eventually leading to a painkiller addiction. The constant need to travel, since the most lucrative early matches were always in Japan, didn't help either. This stars, of course, Dwayne Johnson, as well as Emily Blunt and Ryan Bader. Smashing Machine is hitting theaters October 3rd. Obviously, at the time that we're recording this is well into the past for you, the listeners. So
we are in the past.
We are in the past.
They're listening to this.
You are
in the future.
You are listening to this in the future.
Our future, but
our future. Is it their future or is it ours? Time travel? Like, that's why I just don't get it. Like, no. I don't think it doesn't work. Let's start talking about this movie. Let's talk about the look and feel first. When you're thinking about how this movie, the vibe of this movie, Nate, what stood out to you about it when upon watching it?
Yeah, I think it's very apparent early on with the different aspect ratios that we kind of get. This movie, um, you really do see the way that it's shot, the way that it's filmed, the way that it's presented. I think, apologies if I'm mispronouncing this, but Masio Bishop is the cinematographer
Hmm.
that worked with Benny Safdie on this, and the way that they are able to really put you in those times, one of the coolest sort of magic tricks of the movie, and it's sort of it's cool to sort of see how that cinematography and the style that they're using. I don't know if maybe they use different lenses or what have you. They adapt based on the timing that you are watching throughout the movie. So the cool part with it is that it does feel very much like a dramatic film, but shot like a documentary in a lot of times. And so that was definitely something that stood out for me pretty immediately in terms of the look and feel.
Yeah, I think it's a mix of 16 millimeter film and um like VHS style shooting, and that might be more for the archival purposes.
Hmm.
Um, but you're right, there is a bit of a mix medium going on within shooting it. But yeah, I think what stood out to me is exactly what you said. The film embraces a documentary style that immediately immerses the audience. It made me feel like I was living alongside these characters rather than just watching them from a distance. And this isn't new for Benny Safdie. I think Safdie's decision to build the apartment that Mark and Dawn live in on a soundstage was really, really smart, because this allowed the cinematographer to hide the cameras so that the actors never saw them. And this gave the performance an incredible sense of authenticity. When you
Hmm.
saw Emily and Dwayne just kind of acting off of each other, you could see that it was very freeing. And at the in conversation that I was able to attend with Dwayne Johnson,
Yeah.
he was joined by Emily and Benny, and Dwayne and Emily both described how freeing the setup was. Just it allowed them to forget about the cameras and the movie set mentality and just live in the moment. And that invisible presence, I think, really translates directly to the screen. I think the grit, the intimacy, and the environment, just it all felt raw, it felt lived in. And then you add something like you said, like shooting on 16 millimeter, shooting with VHS, like to give it this aesthetical decision of a time that it should live in. I think that was all really, really smart, and it helped to carry the look of this film to have like a very unique charm that is reminiscent of Uncut Gems, but still very much its own thing, because of the topic of mixed martial arts fighting and UFC. Like it all felt very nostalgic, bringing all of those elements together.
And I mean the hidden cameras, and we'll talk about the performances when we get there. But I mean, for even for people like Ryan Bader or Elon Rosenberg in this movie, who aren't necessarily traditional actors, Elon normally is more of a stunt person. So to sort of see like I hearing you talk about that and understanding that they didn't have a ton of cameras in their face, knowing that they were on a film set, but getting to be in that more realistic environment, I'm sure helped them quite a bit as well. I also wanted to shout out the composer for this
Yes.
movie, which is Nala Senefro, who is a Caribbean Belgian experimental jazz musician based in London. And she like just the way that they were able to um just sort of carry the movie from moment to moment. There's a lot of moments where we're sort of going through a transition from one sequence to another, and there's just these jazz sort of frills that
Hmm.
pop up that really just sort of bring you either to that melancholy place or to that place of hope or some of the chaotic fighting moments for sure. And I will say, like, that I think the score maybe stuck with me the most out of anything in this movie, and it's something that I want to revisit even more than the movie itself.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's said early on, and I think it's actually said by Dwayne, or maybe actually even one of the announcers for one of his fights, talking about freestyle fighting. And you pair that with the freestyle jazz, that it felt like such a proper marriage of the two, something that you wouldn't necessarily think of, but it made sense. And I think, to your point, it's almost disarming. There was a variety of music from that time period that helped to kind of tell us where we were. And then
Hmm.
you would get, like you said, this sort of freestyle, very, very loose jazz score that just kind of like sunk in, and you started to realize that was the soundtrack of this world. It helped to kind of, like you said, drive the hope, drive the emotions, transition us from scene to scene, and from feelings, while also embracing some of the chaotic nature of it. Yeah, I think it was one of those, like, it was a very interesting choice to go with jazz, and it paid off really, really well.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think the only other thing that I wanna mention regarding look and feel, there's a lot of sweaty muscles in this movie, a lot of longing shots just on the things that, Mark Kerr would have had to have, not just done to his body in, some of the negative ways, but also just, like, he is just the wrestlers are completely slick in this, and they use the camera to sort of focus in on those really on their muscles, just to showcase the utter strength of these fighters. And it's used to really great effect, and I appreciated that, and I wrote down some of those moments where we kind of lingered a little bit longer. But no, I think to capture this sport and make it somewhat accessible for people on the outside looking in isn't necessarily the easiest thing to do, and I think they definitely captured it.
Yeah, for sure. I think the if you watch wrestling, and I think some of the people that are going to go see this movie are wrestling fans, baby oiled bodies and sweaty bodies is not something new. But to your point, I think the way it's framed and the way it's shot is to highlight the sort of endurance, the strength, but also the pain that it
Yeah.
causes one to do it. Even with the desire of wanting to put your body through that, but it's for the fans, it's for the cheers, it's for 40,000 people, you know being in your corner and cheering you on, no matter how much pain you go through, as I'm sure Mark would have said back then, it was worth it. But then it also has its effects on the psyche, and I think that's very much why there is that juxtaposition of the physical with the mental, and we see both sides of it, and we see a lot of that pairing.
Now I know we're going back and forth between what we see in this movie and what we hear in this movie. I'm going to do it again just a little bit because I wanted to ask you about the sound of this movie. I know early on we kept looking at each other in this movie theater, and I don't know if it was Scotiabank, if it was the theater that we were in, or if
Yeah,
it
the
really
sound
was
mix
the
sounded
mixing in
off.
this.
Yeah,
Yeah, and
yeah,
and at times I was like, oh, maybe it's to emphasize sort of we're getting in the head of Mark Kerr, we're
right.
distracted or what have you. But what did you think?
We won't know until we see it again. Like, we
Yeah, I
won't we
guess
won't be able to verify
if it
that
was
until we see
intentional
it
or
again,
not.
because if it was intentional or not, because it could have just
Yeah,
been a bit of a hiccup. I can see how it could have been intentional, but I also don't understand, like, just for context for our listeners, there's a opening monologue and there's some music playing, and at a certain point it just felt like the music overtakes the monologue and you can't hear. Now, on paper, that sounds like it could be intentional, but it didn't feel like that because there was just so much dialogue that was there, that I'm wondering if either it was just supposed to we were supposed to hear it, or maybe it was supposed to just feel like it felt for us, where it was like, is this a mistake? Is this a problem? This feels kind of chaotic. This feels kind of like, mashed up. I'm not sure. And maybe that is sort of introduction of to kind of what was going to happen with Mark throughout this film.
yeah. And the other one that I wanted to bring up because we kept looking at each other is just in and around, and I mean this might dive into performances a little bit, but the prosthetics for Dwayne as Mark Kerr. I know we talked a little bit after, about
Mm.
there. It's sort of feeling a little inconsistent. I just wasn't sure if you wanted to bring that up as well.
Yeah, I think there was a specific point in this movie where like
He shaves his head.
he shaves his head, and
Yeah.
literally when he walked in, he just looked like The Rock. And I
Yeah.
was like, did they even put prosthetics on him in that one? And I was speaking with someone after, and they felt the same way, but I think it's a bit of a lighting situation.
Okay.
Like with the prosthetics and the hair before he shaved his head, he looked different. It looked like it was, and the idea too, and the Dwayne talked about this in conversation. It wasn't about obvious prosthetics, it was about subtle prosthetics. And
Mm.
I think it worked. I think it worked for him to kind of for him to look different, and also probably for him as an actor to kind of lean into a different character because he's not relying on the Rock's face, if you will.
Hmm.
But yeah, that one moment he came in with his shaved head, and I was just like, did they even put prosthetics on him in that scene? It didn't look like it. It looked like they forgot and he just walked in. Because then the next scene that we see him with his bald head, it's a little more apparent that his prosthetics were there, and then eventually he gets a little bit of a like a chin strap beard, if you will. I don't know what they call
Little
that. What do they
goatee.
call that? Is a goatee all the way around? It's like
Oh, right. Yeah.
it's
I don't
just
know.
it's
No,
just on your
I think it's
chin.
just on the chin. Write in. Let us know.
Yeah, right in. Let us know. We don't know our beards. We Nate has one. I tend to not grow them,
This
but
has been the same way for. Anyways, we're getting in the weeds
just
here, or
60 years.
in the beard.
Anyways, but yeah, so yeah, I think the prosthetics was a bit of it might have felt a little inconsistent, but it could have also just been lighting. It could have just been the way the lighting was in that situation, because like even when we do see him and it's in the environment of a ring, and the lighting is a lot different, he looked different, the prosthetics looked more pronounced. I'm not going to fault the movie on that necessarily, but
No, for sure.
yeah, I feel
Ca-
like that one instance when he came in with his bald head, I was like, "Is that The Rock?" Because it pretty much looks like him.
yeah, Kazuhiro was the one who did the
Correct.
prosthetics for Dwayne. He also did the prosthetics for Bradley Cooper in Maestro. And
Ah,
also
yes.
he did the prosthetics for which was it? There was one more that I saw here. Joseph Gordon-Levitt for in Looper. And so
Oh, when he
yeah,
was older or younger
when
Bruce Willis.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, 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 yeah.
So I mean, the guy definitely knows what he's doing. I think you're
But
right.
it's
I think it
minimal,
probably
right?
was yeah, and I think but I think it probably did have a lot to do with the way that it was lit. But also I think just Dwayne the Rock Johnson is he's such a face. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
So it's not the easiest job.
Hmm.
So I think for the most part in the movie, he sinks into Mark Kerr because of these prosthetics and a little bit of the
Correct.
performances, but we'll talk about
Yeah. Yeah, well, let's talk about it now. I think, this marks Dwayne Johnson's first dramatic role. This movie feels like the same sort of transition that Jim Carrey went through when he took on the role of Andy Kaufman for Man on the Moon. It was a shift. He's stepping out of his comfort zone of being like slapstick comedy guy and stepping into something more dramatic. And here we have Dwayne stepping out of the big budget Hollywood action star films and really taking on a more dramatic role. And I think this was a very strong first step. But before I go on, I'd love to hear your thoughts about what you thought about Dwayne's performance.
Yeah, I mean, I think coming into this, this being an A24 movie, centered around the fighting business. I couldn't stop thinking about the Iron Claw going into this, and Zac Efron's performance as Kevin Von Erich in that movie, and sort of I'm pretty sure Zac Efron has done dramatic stuff prior, but not that I was familiar with. Um, so I was kind of like thinking, okay, this will probably be a similar situation. I think for the most part, Dwayne does do a great job as this character. I think there's such a wonderful sense of um, kindness that he's able to portray through his eyes, through the prosthetics, and through just the way Mark is. There's a fantastic sequence that if you've seen in the promotion for this movie where he's in a hospital waiting room and there's an older woman who just asks him about his bruises and the way his face is bruised up and what have you. And she just says like, "Do you hate them? Do you hate the other fighters?" And he just gives the most lovely smile and just says, "Absolutely not." And I think that sequence and a few other sequences. There's one where Mark is, without spoiling anything, he's confronted kind of full stop by someone very close to him, and he has to go from acting as though everything's perfectly fine to instantly just recoiling. And Dwayne's a big guy. He pulls a little blanket up over his face and he starts to cry. And that stuck with me. That got to me. I think he has a great chemistry with Emily Blunt, which we can talk about. I think for the most part, this was a good step in the right direction. Did it hit the levels that I was hoping for? Did it hit the same level as someone like Zac Efron in The Iron Claw, or some of the other dramatic turns for actors that you mentioned, Justin? No, but we can get there. I think we can. I don't know.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think for Dwayne, his vulnerability shines through this role.
Hmm.
It's refreshing to see him reach beyond his Hollywood persona. And he admitted both at Venice and here at TIFF
Hmm.
that he pigeonholed himself. Actually, in Venice, he didn't admit that he did it himself, which is why so many
He
people
got a lot of heat.
he got a lot of heat after that, where he was talking about being pigeonholed into doing these more Hollywood films, and that he was doing this for himself, and that he didn't really care about what the audience thought, but he was doing this for his own benefit, and I applaud that. I believe that you should do what you think is right. So he had this gut feeling, and this is why he wanted to approach this role.
Hmm.
At the in conversation here in Toronto, he did say the same sentiments, but he added, which he did to himself, which means he embraces the fact that he thought that this was all that those Hollywood films were the only things that he could do.
Mm.
And again, I think this is really great. I think it doesn't mean that it was going to be a home run, the first thing, because you know there are moments where you can see the seams where the performance still looks like acting. And
Hmm.
while I don't think that this is an Oscar winning role for him, though a nomination might be possible potentially, I don't even think that that might be possible when you think about like five different actors. Like,
Yeah.
he did a really great job, and I think he's more of an honorable mention for the year. But I think what excites me more is what this might signal for more roles outside of the Hollywood action mold, that and Dwayne could really kind of grow into being a formidable dramatic actor if he can just do more of it,
Yeah.
and flex his strengths. And his next film is with Benny Safdie again, so I think if there's that partnership and that collaboration between the two, where he can really kind of go further and further and really lean into it, be interesting. And I know he's going to be in a Martin Scorsese film, but honestly, I don't expect that role to be a dramatic role for him. If anything, I think Martin might just play to his strengths and have him do have Dwayne do what he does best for that film. So
Hmm.
we'll
Hmm.
see when that comes around. But the standout for me was Emily Blunt, in
Yeah.
all honesty. And
Scene stealer.
she was a scene stealer,
Yeah.
and she was phenomenal. And I think her performance, it just felt effortless. It felt natural, the kind that lifts the whole film in a lot of ways. And because of her friendship with Dwayne, their dynamic felt deeply real. And in many ways, I think her performance elevated his.
Oh yeah.
Like, some of my favorite moments of Dwayne's like performances was with Emily, was when Mark and Don were going at it, right? And it's because of the way the environment was set up to hide the cameras and to give them the freedom to just act off of each other and be in the moment and maybe improvise. It felt like at times it was meant to be very improvised. And her presence really pushes Dwayne to dig deeper. And I just feel like the story, though, didn't really utilize her. I think she was written more as like an object within
Hmm.
within Mark's arc, and that wasn't really fleshed out as a character.
Hmm.
Do you know what I mean? Like, I feel like it was almost a bit of a disservice to her, but I think
She's definitely more of like a she is like a catalyst character, right? She is
she
sort
is,
of
but yeah,
pushing his story
right.
forward. But
And that's what I
I
mean by
think
object, right? Like, that's what I mean
no,
by an
for sure.
object for the story, but, like, I just feel like there was at a certain point, she just disappeared, and then it
Hmm.
was like, "What the hell?" Like, you know what I mean? And then it just kinda shifted, and I get what the story was going for and why it needed to shift, but I don't know if that was for the best, and I think keeping her around more would have just made the story that much more interesting, and we'll talk about when we get there.
Well, I think in terms of their performances together were phenomenal, like you were saying. Like it's not often that I think of chemistry, and I think a lot of people don't think of chemistry between characters that are supposed to be in love or in a relationship. Usually they think of chemistry as like, oh, they're so in love, oh, they're laughing at each other so perfectly and in time and so naturally. And for this movie, the chemistry comes in the fights, not in the ring, but between Don and Mark. And it's staggering at times, and it feels very real, and it feels very heavy, and it gets to some places with Don specifically where there are moments where you recognize she's not good for him, he's not good for her,
Yeah, it's a
they're not
toxic
good for each
relationship.
other. It's
Yeah.
very
Yeah.
toxic, but at the
Mhm.
same time, there are some sequences where when they are together, you can see
It's a
how at
yeah.
some moments of their lives that it was a good thing. And you do get to sort of witness both sides of that. And I think that's one of the wonderful things about Emily's performance is just how much more broad and in the sort of the range that she has for this
Mhm.
character.
Mm.
It's on full display, and yeah, she's incredible. She's as we said, she's a scene stealer. Really, really enjoyed her
I
performance in this movie.
I could see her being nominated.
That would be
I
amazing.
could.
Yeah.
Yeah, I could see her being nominated, and I wonder, though, based on her screen time,
If
if she
mhm,
would be supporting or if she would be
I think
I
supporting
don't
would
know if that
yeah,
necessarily matters. I might just be making that shit up, but,
yeah.
like, she's definitely the best actress. She would be in the best actress category, but I don't know. There's no other actress that she's competing with, so that's the other thing, right? She is the only woman that is featured as the main cast on this uh, list, as
Yeah,
far
for
as
the
I
most
know.
part. Yeah.
Yeah, for the most part.
Mhm.
Yeah, so yeah, she was phenomenal. I do think that she'll get some award love when the season comes up.
And if I can just give a quick shout out to Ryan Bader,
Yeah, I was going to do the
uh
same.
he was great. He was
He was
like
standout. Yeah,
I
he understood his role though, right? Like
yeah.
he definitely like he just kind of brought himself to that role,
Yeah.
and at one point you're just rooting for him. You know what I
I
mean?
was
Like
ca-
you're just
I felt like I cared about him almost the most out of anyone in this movie, to the point where I think you caught me a few times in some of the fight sequences where he might start to do a little bit better in the sequence. You caught me like, yeah, like as if it was like a
and I was like,
real,
calm down. It's a fake fight. It's
as
like
if I was
wrestling
watching
is
like a
fake, but
live
like
sport
it's
event.
a yeah. I know.
But
It's
it
like
felt that way,
yes.
and I think but kudos to again, just the entire production design, the way that it was shot, and I think his performance in those fights to get me to that place. But I think he portrays Mark, not Mark Kerr, but Mark Coleman
Yeah, the marks.
as the Marks.
Yeah.
He portrays him just as kind of, I know Dwayne is the Rock, but he kind of is the Rock for Mark Kerr. Mark Coleman is, and the way that he is sort of
And
just so supportive of just both him and Don was so lovely to see.
yeah, Rob Bader certainly surprised me. I wasn't expecting someone with no background in acting to be one of the most believable and one of the most authentic people in this movie. That said, Emily Blunt does a fantastic job, as we said, and The Rock is obviously leaning in. But for Rob Bader, he's a bit of outside of his element, so it's really cool to see him take this on, and also just like you were saying, have a character that we're so connected with that in the end we're rooting for him to succeed. But yeah, like again, he just added another layer of authenticity, another layer of truth to the cast. With Emily leaning into her character, obviously Dwayne going the distance, and I don't think I had any problem really overall with the performances from this movie. To be honest, the struggle for me is really around the story itself. You know, let's talk about it
Yeah.
because for me, yeah, I think the Smashing Machine story is the struggle. It feels overly simple and almost basic at times.
Hmm.
What's here never fully lands for me.
Hmm.
Personally, I think outside of the domestic fights between Dwayne and Emily's characters, there isn't much tension or real stakes. Like you get to that one point where there's this realization for Mark of what he needs to do, and then after that, it's just a shift, and then we're getting to the end of the film, and it just makes the film feel like it's a stretch, and it's really just kind of it fell flat for me. And it's not that the story is bad, it's just lacking depth in my
Hmm.
opinion, and failing to just truly capitalize on the emotional potential of its setup, of what is being mixed into the pot. You know what I mean? I think it's a lot of drama, like especially with the domestic stuff that we saw between Emily and Dwayne. And there's just it doesn't really amass anything else outside of that. It's just that. And then that kind of goes away, and then it's something else. So I don't even know what I was expecting really, but this wasn't it. I was just really shocked that it was just so simple.
Yeah. I mean, I think the story and the way that this script is done, there are highlights. I think for me, I think my favorite way that they sort of characterized Mark's need to win very early on as a foreshadowing for drug addiction, um, was really well done. I think that was something that I sort of was able to see through, kind of all the other elements that we've talked about so far. But I think you're right. I think there's a certain level of almost been there, done that. There's a certain level of it feels like we've seen a lot of this movie before in other films. And I think it almost, to me, the way that you're describing it just now almost makes me feel as though Benny Safdie wrote this movie, did the screenplay for this movie, and then sort of said, well, the performances are going to be so great that it's okay if we maybe are a little bit flat on the actual
Well, he also
storyline.
edited this film. I also wanna just point that
Okay.
out. I
Yeah.
noticed that he was the editor of this film, which again, I always say, you write your screenplay, but then you rewrite it in the edit, right? So there's a lot of things that you can do, and maybe to your point, that's where it shifts,
Hmm.
right? Maybe that's where we get that shift.
And I just think it's very possible though that it was just a matter of like, okay, well, we're this is going to be such
Performance
a
heavy first, right?
yeah, this
Yeah.
is performance
It is
first
true. That is true.
more
That's a good
than
way of looking at
more
it.
than the story.
Yeah, because it does feel like that's what it is, and because like I said, like, The Rock was great, but I really do feel like it was Emily that was pushing The Rock,
And
right? And,
I
like,
think if you saw those scenes with her and some
mhm,
of the places that she goes,
mhm.
I get it. I
Yeah,
get
for
it
sure.
to a certain degree, but at the end of the
Mhm.
day, when we're watching these things as a whole, and we're watching these things, and I personally was not familiar with anything in terms of Mark Kerr, Mark Coleman, Don. Like, I didn't know any of
So,
this
do
before
you
we got
feel
into
like
the
you
movie.
know him better, though, now? Through this film, though? Like, do you think that it's done
I feel like I know a little bit about his relationship with Don more,
right.
and I feel like I understand some elements of the plight that goes into being a incredibly successful MMA fighter. That's about it. I can't really, I don't think this is a complete story. I don't know if that's maybe what they wanted to go for, but it feels like a the level of storytelling that we would get out of what you would expect from a conventional docudrama, and not something that I think we might expect from Benny Safdie. You know what I
Sure.
mean? Like, I feel
Yeah.
like Benny Safdie, with that name and with some of the other work that he's done, it comes with an air of, this is going to be something different, and it
Well,
just
I
felt
think
like
that's
something of more the same, if that
and
makes
that's
sense.
where the expectations didn't land for me,
Right.
because it's exactly it. You got Benny Safdie, you got Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, you got Emily Blunt. It's about UFC fighting, like, it
Takes
ticked a
place in
lot of boxes.
Japan, which, by the
There's a
way, TIFF,
yeah, there's a little bit of yeah.
you knew that we all went to Japan and then just had to give us Rental
I
Family and all these
I gotta
movies that
say,
are in Japan,
I
bro.
think it's also just going with the fad of telling stories that exist in Japan, because
Sure.
everybody, I bet you at the end of this year, it'll be interesting to see how many people are recapping their trips and how many of them went to Japan. Okay, look, we're not talking about Japan. Let's get to our final thoughts about this film, and our rating, which will be out of 1 to 5 smashed doors.
Oh yeah, that's oh yeah. Actually, you know what? That was a great moment. Um, yeah, so I think this is a good movie that gets to the dramatic places you'd expect from the performances in the film, especially with someone like we said with Emily Blunt. I think she serves an incredible scene stealing performance. I really enjoyed Ryan Bader in this movie as Coleman, and I think this is a great step in the right direction, like we said, for Dwayne Johnson. I do hope to see him in more roles that aren't just the Rock. And I think this movie, it gets to me in some instances. There's a lot of things that I'm going to remember about it, but the majority of those things, like we said, are not the story. I think the cinematography, the editing, the cinematography, the music, definitely sort of outweigh those things in my mind. And I want to listen to that soundtrack more than I want to go back to the movie. This didn't quite reach what I was hoping for. I was expecting maybe just a little bit more from Benny Safdie, and just sort of the feeling of coming into this movie after something like the Iron Claw. So yeah, I'm at a 3 out of 5 smashed doors.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I said this in our TIFF recap. The Smashing Machine ended up being one of my disappointments from the festival, but that doesn't mean it was a bad movie,
No.
because it's not. The film looks incredible, as we were talking about. It sounds incredible. There's an intention to the nostalgic aspects of really putting this in a time period from a visual standpoint, from an auditory standpoint. Emily Blunt delivers an outstanding performance, and as you were mentioning, Dwayne takes a really admirable leap into new territory, and I hope to see more of it, and I look forward to him doing more movies like this. But still, it's the story. It just feels so underdeveloped. It feels a little boring, and it's very limited drama outside of the domestic drama that we witness. Like you said, like, it is performance led, this movie, and the narrative just kind of takes a back seat, and it just kind of finds a way of getting there. And to your point with Benny Safdie branching out solo, I was hoping for something that would stand on its own. It makes me wonder, Joshua, his brother, he has his own project that's on its way out soon. What would have been if this film was done by the two of them?
Hmm.
It leaves me wondering if there was anything like that. But in the end, I admire the look, the grit, and the performances, but it's the story that just left me cold. So I'm giving this one a 3 out of 5 smash doors as well.
Smashing.
Smashing. Our score was lined up. Yes, quite. Well, that is it for our spoiler-free review for A24's The Smashing Machine. Again, a huge thanks to the Toronto International Film Festival for accrediting us as press so we can attend this screening and bring you this review early. It's very early for us, not so early for you, when you're listening to it. But if you want to let us know what you think of the movie when you do go see it, maybe we're totally wrong, maybe we're right, or maybe we're somewhere in the middle. I don't know where we would be. Well, you can reach out to us at wearegeekcentric@gmail.com. That's wearegeekcentric@gmail.com. Or you can hit us up on Twitter at geekcentricyt, or on Instagram and TikTok at wearegeekcentric.
And be sure to smash those follow buttons.
That died like 2 years ago, man. I don't know why you're trying to bring that back.
Come on.
Oh, right, Smashing Machine.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah. Ugh.
I get it. I
I'm
get
gonna
the
go. I'm gonna go
joke.
smash some tacos. So
Yeah,
on that.
exactly. Keep in mind, we have a ton of great episodes for you to enjoy. Keeping it TIFF focus. I know it's been a couple weeks probably by the time that this episode comes out, but we do have our This Week in Geek episode where we recap our experience, our first time going to the Toronto International Film Festival as press, what that experience was like, some of our favorite movies outside of some of the ones that we're going to be doing reviews for. We do have more reviews coming. We do
Who
have one
knows?
that's out that I can think of right now, which
Yes.
is Nirvana, the band, the show, the movie, one of our favorites from the festival. That is a spoiler-free review that is out now for you to enjoy. But we also have a variety of other spoiler-free reviews. I'm pretty sure we have our spoiler-free review for Only Murders in the Building, which is ongoing at this very moment. We were fortunate enough to see the first 9 episodes. I'm not sure where you're at right now on your episode watch, but I'm sure you're not at episode 9. But if you are, and you want to hear our thoughts, feel free to take a listen. We will also have a spoiler-free review for the Prime Video series Gen V Season 2. We also have a spoiler-free review for Marvel Animation's Marvel Zombies, which is out now for you to enjoy. All 4 episodes are already out, so you can enjoy those and listen to our spoiler-free review. We also have some fun interviews for Marvel Animation's Marvel Zombies. Nate had the chance to sit down with Brad Winderbaum and Brian Andrews for the second time joining us on the Geekcentric podcast. It's pretty wild. We also have our interview with Gaten Matarazzo and Tony Revolori from Lego Star Wars Rebuild the Galaxy, Pieces of the Past. Nate and Darcy had the opportunity to sit down with them and geek out about all things Lego and all things Star Wars. We have more reviews on the way. We have more stuff to look forward to. We are in the cozy geek fall time season, so get ready for more. But Nate, thank you so much for joining me for this smashing review. Until next time, as we say,
Love ya.
peace.